claiming that the city had engaged in fair housing violations. What had basically happened was the city was looking to build new lower income housing in a non-impacted area of the city, not in the usual spot. And the neighbors came out to public meetings and said all kinds of terrible things about not wanting those families and those children, et cetera, in their neighborhood. So, of course, in America, people could say whatever they want. But when the city acted on that, that's what became the fair housing violation. So in 86, the parties settled and they created what's called a consent decree, or which really means an agreement that's signed off upon by the court. So that's what makes our system a little unusual, but there's no reason that the underlying structures couldn't be implemented anywhere in Connecticut. So that created an 8-member commission, which represents different bodies. So it's not just any old person. They have to, of course, be an elector of the city of Norwalk, and also they represent either an organization or the mayor. Some of the organizations include the NAACP, Connecticut Legal Services, Norwalk Housing Authority, Norwalk's Human Relations Commission. So again, there's that link between the two. Redevelopment Agency, and the mayor has 2 appointments. And so it's an 8-member commission. And then the consent decree also created my position, the position of fair housing officer. So the job of the fair housing officer is, 1, to be staff to the commission, and 2, of course, I have a job description. So, and it's the way I break it down is I assist residents with their questions. So people call me all the time, and often fair housing issues arise in the landlord-tenant relationship. So somebody might be calling about something else. So you can't dismiss it too quickly. And in the course of discussing, my landlord wants some crazy increase in the rent. You find out that the landlord is doing it because whatever, you now have children and they don't want children and they're trying to get rid of you, for example. Or you've recently become a Section 8 recipient and they don't want Section 8, which I hope you know is illegal in Connecticut. So often, my point is that people call in, and what they're calling about may be one issue, and as you talk to them and say, okay, tell me about what's going on, you find there are other issues. There are fair housing issues. So you assist residents in that regard. If somebody has a fair housing complaint, for example, they won't take Section 8, or they want me out because I have children, then you investigate. Ideally, there's some witness other than the complainant. But if not, it's my job to investigate these claims and look for the proof. In my own mind, I consider it packaging a case. What I want to do is put together a case that has enough evidence to, be a successful case, and then I hand it off. I don't actually litigate. I end up often being a witness in these cases because of my investigation. But I hand it off often to the Connecticut Fair Housing Center, which is a group of pro bono attorneys. And I also have some attorneys locally in the Norwalk area that will take cases. I work with Connecticut Legal Rights Project for people who have mental health disabilities. They'll represent them. So having this job when you're a one-person office with very limited financial means, and you gotta have partners. And happily over the years, I've developed a million really great partners who I appreciate more than I can say. So you assist residents. The other thing that comes up a lot, and I'd encourage your human relations commissions to look at this, is what's called reasonable accommodations or reasonable modifications under fair housing law. And basically that's when a person with a disability needs a change in either a policy or practice or procedure because of their disability, or in the case of modifications, when they need something changed to the physical structure. The easy example of that may be a ramp, a wheelchair ramp. In that case, basically the tenant has to make the request, and generally speaking, the landlord has to permit the tenant to make that modification, unfortunately at the tenant's expense. And since that's often an issue, people with disabilities are often also low income and can't afford this. Again, you look for partners. For a long time, our Family and Children's Agency had a carpentry program, and they would build ramps. I think they were doing it on a sliding income scale. So I don't think they do that anymore, but basically you look for partners to assist you in helping people make their, whatever they need come to fruition. So reasonable accommodations of change in policy, practice, procedure, reasonable modifications. Often another one that really, I guess the one that comes about most often is in accommodations is needing a parking spot. Somebody lives in an apartment complex, the spots are all sort of catch as catch can. And because not only a wheelchair, but it could be emphysema or a heart condition, there's lots of reasons why somebody might need a spot assigned near their door. So that comes up all the time. And these are ways that, I assist residents in going through the process, because often the knee-jerk reaction of a landlord is just no. And so, we can start by educating the landlord that no alone is not an appropriate answer. And we need to engage in a conversation and see what can be done. So I work with a lot of residents based on that. Seniors, we're all going to develop some kind of disability if we're lucky enough to get old enough. And so there's just an unlimited number of people who need our assistance and will continue to need our assistance going forward.
That's really great.
Oh. I'm sorry.
No, I said that's really great that the city has an organization to do that.
Thank you. Yep. Yeah, I'm proud of Norwalk. This whole thing might have been sort of shoved down their throat, if you will, through a court action, but I'm proud of Norwalk for providing this kind of service, to our residents. I live here as well as work here, so this truly is close to my heart because it's my home.
Yep.
And then, as I said, I investigate complaints. But we meaning me and the Fair Housing Advisory Commission, also look at more systemic issues, as opposed to individual cases. And we recommend either policies or actions that the city or somebody else should be taking. So many years ago, during the heyday of right before the real estate market crashed, there was a ton of unfair lending, predatory lending going on. We in the commission got the data on where the most subprime loans were happening in Norwalk, and we started a program called Don't Let a Thief Steal Your House. And we went door to door. Again, we got through volunteer groups, we got the manpower, some young people to walk with me and put those flyers door to door. So I can't tell you if it worked. If, we could educate people, we never really know the outcome of that. But what I can tell you is we had less subprime loan lending in Norwalk than one might expect. And we also had fewer foreclosures. So I like to think it was helpful. But that's an issue that I and the commission together identified, came up with a program and addressed. A little more recently, we've been looking at housing segregation. So Norwalk is a city and it's very, very diverse, but within the city, our neighborhoods tend to be fairly segregated, just like everywhere else in the country. And as many of you know, Connecticut is one of the most highly segregated states in the country. So part of the Fair Housing Act, there's sort of a twofold purpose to the act. One is addressing segregation, and the part we don't think about is addressing segregation as opposed to handling discrimination complaints. So a number of years ago, Daisy Franklin and I in particular really started advocating at public meetings and hearings for more affordable housing and to have it be more inclusively sort of included in development. And we met a lot of resistance. You have to have the patience of a saint to do this job sometimes. I think it took us about 5 years before the zoning commission finally passed what they called a workforce housing regulation, which I don't love the name, but this is sausage making. You're never going to get everything you want. So you work hard towards the ideal, and then you get what you get, and then you continue to work towards the ideal. Like, in a way, the job is never done. And the policy happily, passed, became part of the city regulations. It wasn't perfect, and it has been amended several times, making it better. So to me, that's the goal. You get something passed, just like Congress should be doing. You get something passed, and then you work to get it made better over the years, hopefully. So we do have a workforce housing, which really is including quote unquote affordable housing as the state defines it into most developments, not single family, of course, but most multifamily developments. So it's part of that patchwork quilt that I think of in terms of income. We buy homes or we rent homes based on our income, and our income might range from $0, in which case, there's public housing, to sort of middle dollars, in which group often gets left out, and then higher end. So another concept we came up with in Norwalk, and we're still pushing for, we're calling 35-65 housing, which is, we're looking at people who make between $35,000 and $65,000. When we put a number, and that's our group that's above public housing need, but below everything else, and way below market rate in a very expensive market like Norwalk. And so they're a group that's often left out and essentially swept up to Bridgeport. And you can't have fair housing. You can't have fair housing without available affordable housing. So that's sort of why Norwalk Fair Housing has been looking at these issues. So that's an ongoing project, but we have had some success, and we continue to look at more success. And FYI, by calling it 35-65 housing, and you'd have to look at your own numbers in your own communities, but we got a lot less of that pushback about those people. That stereotypical discriminatory point of view of, I work hard and somebody else is sitting on their couch eating bonbons and you want me to, worry about housing for them. When we put it into numbers, I think a lot of people realize either that's me, or that's my mother, or that's my kid. And we just got a whole lot less of that. So I'd encourage you, come up with a tagline like that and use it. And the first time, I know Daisy and I almost had a celebration. The first time we heard council people started talking about 35-65 housing.
So, that's really great. And I'd like to move on to Daisy and then to Dawn so they could introduce themselves. But before I do that, first of all, there are some other sessions later this afternoon about zoning in Connecticut. I think that's a great panel, and that would be a really interesting topic to bring up there as well. But we did get one question for you before I move on to Daisy. What are some of the most common types of housing complaints that you would investigate? Are they what you were talking about before with the accommodation situation, or Section 8, or something else?
Sort of all of the above. Definitely reasonable accommodations, which is not so much a complaint as I have a need. How can I get what I need? And Section 8 is still routinely turned away by landlords, even though in most cases that's illegal in Connecticut under state law. Families with children, people saying, oh, I don't want kids. Kids are destructive, or kids could get hurt, or, whatever. My property's not set up for kids. So we get that. I even got that when I was looking for an apartment when I first had this job. That I was a single mother at the time, and I also got, I can't rent to single mothers because you guys lead wild and crazy lives and, party all the time. And I felt quite left out because I worked and did homework and had bath time and bedtime. So somehow I missed out on all the partying. So yeah, so then you get people inquiring about things that are not illegal, like the landlord wants a credit score of X. And that's unfortunate because, the lower income we are, typically our credit scores are lower because we have a harder time paying the bills, obviously. So, but I would say reasonable accommodation, Section 8, and families with children are probably the most common cases that I look
And
at.
even the credit score questions might be worth looking into. And again, I bring it up with some of our fair housing people because there could be, there's obviously a racial component to that as well, because race and income, especially in Connecticut, are so closely tied together.
Yep.
And then sometimes it's interesting that a landlord will accept a lower credit score from someone who's white as opposed to someone else. But that's for the housing panel as well, although I'm always interested in discussing that. Is Daisy Franklin available to introduce herself? I know she's with you. So, hello. Hello. So what you do with the human relations? I understand it seems to tie in a good amount with the Fair Housing Office as well, but do you have different perspectives as well, or different areas that you work in?
Yes. Again, I'm the Human Relations Commissioner for the City of Newark, and currently, right now, we haven't been doing too much because of COVID for one, and then we're looking for a director. So we're right now not really doing any work, but we have in the past had events dealing with the Declaration of Human Rights. And one of the articles in the Declaration of Human Rights is dealing with education and making sure that people understand, like if for transgender, the discrimination against transgender, not being able to have housing or jobs, or even the Me Too or day labor. So we had events dealing with these things and educating people on this, and it really turned out to be really well and it very educational. And the people that came to the events was glad they came. We had something on criminal justice when it came to a person that has done their time and now looking for housing or even a job. So we had a great panel which talked about being the box and about the housing. When it came to transgender, we had a panel and a good speaker. And at the end with the civil rights, what made me really is personal to me when it comes to discrimination against anybody, because even with the transgender person, they said that the person wanted to go to a restaurant and the restaurant told them that they couldn't eat in the restaurant, but they would serve them the food from the back of the restaurant. Now
Oh my God.
yes, oh my God, that's how I felt. And it reminded me how the African American was treated. We couldn't go inside a restaurant. We had to go in the back. So when you deal with these things, it educates people to let them know about this, the what people are going through, and the fact that the Declaration of Human Rights say that everyone is entitled to housing, everyone is entitled to health, we are born to have free dignity and peace, and we shouldn't have to worry about because of my religion, my sexual orientation, or we should be able to walk around and be with brotherhood towards each other, not be treated because you don't understand my way of living. I should, as a transgender, I should be able to go rent a house, apartment, without having to worry about my neighbors looking at me as someone bad or not wanting me in their community. So, and even with a person who has done the time right now, I'm really happy to hear when it comes to prisoners, how they had the program and they now have them where they can go to get jobs. Because of COVID, a lot of the people are now using inmates to go to do the work that they one time wasn't going to hire them for. So I think that's really something great, because you have to give a person a chance. With housing was one of the things that was bad for people with inmates. They couldn't they get out of jail, they done their time, now they need housing, but the public housing won't give them housing. So, and then they have families. They can't go to their family. They may have a wife and children. They're not allowed to be in a house. So, that part right there really needed to be worked. They wanted a job, and then that's why we supported the ban the box. But when it comes to Norwalk, we're unique because Fair Housing and the Human Relations Commission work together. On the Commission of Fair Housing, you have the NAACP. I was the person that represented the NAACP, and then we had the Human Relations Commission, where Carol Frank, our current, was the representative for Human Relations Commission. When they did work together, I really felt that partnership, working together, the Fair Housing and the Human Relations Commission, when it came to going around educating landlords on their rights, tenants on their rights, for the community, was something that was really important. And it was beneficial because everybody had understanding to what their rights were and what they couldn't do. So a lot of the work that Margaret was doing is kind of like tied in with the Human Relations Commission. And right now the Human Relations Commission will take cases, but we right now we're not doing any work. We had Adam Bobowski used to be our director, and Anna Keegan was our director, which we no longer have. So right now, currently, we are searching aggressively for a director, and the director, Adam, with the Human Relations Commission, we had ADA, and we helped make Norwalk more compliance to the ADA, and that was something I'm very proud of our city for Norwalk. We have more parking spaces. The sidewalks are cut and made for handicap. The bathroom, senior citizen home places have been fixed up because of the ADA. And those are subcommittees in the Human Relations Commission. So I'm very proud and honored to be a part of it as a citizen. I'm not no lawyer. I'm on the commission, and I'm very thankful to be able to partner with Margaret Suber on the things that we're doing and advocating. And if we have to go to the council and advocate for different things, I'm very happy because I'm compassionate concerning discrimination against anyone. So I'll leave that at that, and I'll end with everyone deserves the right to have housing. Everyone deserves the right to be able to live with dignity and freedom.
Yeah, I agree, and thank you so much. And the education component is really excellent. Making sure people know what their rights are and know what their obligations are. Now, going over to another part of the state, we have Dawn Ennis from West Hartford, from the West Hartford Human Relations Commission. And so now that we've heard from Norwalk, which is down in the southwestern part of the state, can you tell us what's going on up in West Hartford? Oh, you're muted.
But now.
Okay, yep.
I want to know where these parties are for single moms, because I have not heard about the parties for single moms. I'm interested in going. I am a transgender woman, and I love what we just heard, because a lot of what I have been going through is because of my identity. Just a moment ago, my BFF, another trans woman, wrote this, and I just want to basically read this to explain to those cisgender people what it's been like the last couple of days. In the last week, I've had to sit through whether my legitimacy and humanity as a trans woman is debatable enough that a popular comic on Netflix has the right to dehumanize and denigrate my existence. The BBC wrote an article that claims that trans women are essentially sexually assaulting cisgender lesbians because we are so unattractively masculine that no real lesbian would ever desire us. Trans women are apparently conversion therapy made flesh, and to even suggest that we are desirable is homophobic. And in Texas, there's a new law, the 10th in the nation, that outlaws transgender athletes. Texas and Florida are about to have laws that will outlaw medical transition for anyone under 18. I turned to the CHRO when my company responded to my coming out as trans by putting me in a back office away from customers, by telling me that I could no longer interact with the customers or with the materials that the customers interacted with, touched and things. They hid me away. And I sued and we settled. But this is the second time in my life that my company decided to take action, a company, because of who I am. I don't have the most beautiful, sweet voice. I've worked on it. It's better than it was. But even last night, I had a gentleman say, "Thank you, sir." And in the last week, it's happened 5 or 6 times where someone called me sir. I don't think I look like a sir, but people listen to their ears instead of looking at their eyes and what they see, and they determine my gender. And every one of those is a little razor slash against my body. It's been so bad that, yes, I twice tried to end my life. I'm in a great place now. I am a single mom. I am raising 3 wonderful, beautiful kids. I keep a house. I have 5, well, now 6 part-time jobs to keep the roof over our heads. But this is what I do because I can't have a full-time job. I work part-time because there is no one who will hire me full-time. I am one of two transgender women in the entire United States who report on television. The other one's in Denver. No other trans woman is a reporter on television except for this woman and me. It's crazy. I'm just another woman. I'm not like every other woman. I'm not even like most women. I'm just a different kind of woman. But that doesn't mean I'm any less human. And thanks to the CHRO, we were able to hold this company here in West Hartford accountable. And I'm hoping that thanks to the hard work, other people won't have to go through what I've gone through. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and thank you. And what does the West Hartford Human Relations Commission get involved in, or human relations?
Well, the good news is that we in West Hartford have a separate committee that is focused only on human rights. And we're not talking about equality, we're talking about equity. What the West Hartford Human Rights Commission is doing is making sure that everyone, depending on race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, gender expression, economic status, is able to obtain and receive all the benefits our town offers. We have demonstrated, we have contacted our officials. We are in monthly meetings in which we address issues. The most simple one, a contractor put up signs to let people know that men were at work. Men at work. Hello, it's 2021. Believe it or not, there are women in the construction industry. This company had an outdated sign. We contacted our town officials. The town officials contacted the contractor, and they basically made it clear, if you'd like to do work with our town, you have to represent all the people, not just the guys. And they fixed it. It's something small, but it means something because it represents all people. We also take individual cases as well as we are trying to help some coaches who felt that they were discriminated against based on their backgrounds. They were mistreated, and we are working with the league, the sports league, the youth sports league, to make sure that their rights are represented. So that's what the West Hartford Human Rights Commission does, and we encourage people to come to us to let us know how we can step up for you.
And what's the process in West Hartford? We have a question here. What's the process like if someone does want to file a complaint internally with West Hartford? How do they do that?
Well, the good news is that we have this thing called the internet. And it used to be you had to make a phone call or you write a letter. And I still have people write me letters. But the problem is that, there are older folks who don't have access to the internet. And for the most majority, they go to our website at the town of West Hartford. And there's a Human Rights Commission site. And each commissioner has a link where you can either contact us individually or contact the entire commission. Let people know they can also call my house, and I've done that. I've spoken to people over the phone, and again, once in a while we get a letter. But it's done.
Great. No, that's really good. Before I throw it open and see if people have any questions, or else put out some of my own, I just want to let people know that, because it's not a provision of our laws that is used very often, but when people make complaints to the local human rights commissions, if they're then not satisfied with how they come out, or they want something different, they can appeal those decisions to the CHRO. And in those cases, we sit as an appeal entity, and almost like an appellate court or an appellate agency over the local human rights commissions. I did look back, and I don't know any cases that have gone through a full process, although we've gotten an occasional call about that situation. But similar to some of the types of complaints that you take, these are things that people can come to the state about as well at CHRO. But, sometimes people do prefer to keep it local. We got an earlier question, actually, someone was saying that they tried to get housing in Norwalk a while ago, and it was for a couple, and the landlord required that the combined income be greater than or equal to 3 times the amount of rent. So not more than 1/3 of their income would go to housing or to rent. And is that a technically legal type of requirement, or is it something that might show evidence of discrimination? And I'm wondering how you might feel about that with respect to the fair housing entity in Norwalk.
Of course, like everything in the law, sort of it depends.
Yeah.
If a person has a subsidy, like Section 8 or RAP, then it's very clear that that is a fair housing violation. That basic case that went to the Connecticut Supreme Court a number of years ago. And so that, because Section 8 calculates what a person pays based on their income, and typically it's about 30% of their income, they can afford an apartment that is approved by Section 8. So in terms of not Section 8, even then it depends. If that's a hard and fast rule that the landlord applies all the time, then it's probably not discriminatory. If, however, they pick and choose, like you said before, where they say, oh, Margaret looks like a nice person and she works for the city, so even though she doesn't meet my standard, I'll accept her. But then they look at someone who looks like Daisy and says, oh no, you have to have 3 times the rent, So when they're discriminating between people and not applying the same standard, then you have a problem. So, that is usually critical though. So if a landlord has a standard and they apply it across the boards, no matter who comes, knocking, then typically that's not discriminatory.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to even throw this out to people in the audience as well, because we've heard the different things that Norwalk and West Hartford do to get involved and to get their communities engaged. What are some ways that you try to engage your communities in some of the other human rights agencies, that you either educate your constituents or provide information for them so that they can protect their rights? Just someone wants to, you can either raise your hand or just turn on your mic. And yes, Joe Keogh.
Hi, everyone. I'm the chair of the Guilford Human Rights Commission, although that will only be the case for about 24 more hours before my vice chair, Juan Kohlberg, takes over, which I'm very excited about. Some of the things that we're working on right now that have gotten really good feedback from the community are hosting webinars through Zoom. We can use our town's Zoom account for that. In response to the CRT Board of Education hoopla that we're experiencing here in Guilford, we brought in Judge Angela Robinson, who is a professor who teaches CRT at Quinnipiac University. That webinar got really, really great feedback, or we got great feedback on that from our community. We also recently had a webinar where recent alumni of Guilford High School spoke about their experiences both in high school and in the real world. So sort of discussing why equity initiatives are so important on the high school level. We're also working with our high school to bring in a student liaison who would be, well, actually two, one who would be a senior, one who would be a junior, who would be non-voting members of the commission and allow for a lot of interaction between, you know, the adult community in Guilford and the high school. So we're finding that webinars are a really great way to provide quality education to the community. And we don't have a budget yet. We're still a new commission, about 2 years in. So we're hoping that we might get a budget next year, but we've been able to get funding for the webinars, the speakers that we've brought in, both through a local foundation, the Guilford Foundation, and through some foundations in New Haven.
Wow, that's great. Dawn, you want to comment on that?
West Hartford's Human Rights Commission, I'm the co-chair, and have been tasked with trying ways to make things happen without money. One of those ways is we are trying to bring to the West Hartford residents what other groups are doing. We have a new civilian police review. So we're going to have someone from the Civilian Police Review Board make a presentation, and we're going to ask them questions. We have other groups that people have no idea what they're doing, and we want to basically, you know, ask them, what are they doing to advance human rights? One of the things that I also want to dispel is that we are not all progressives. We are not all liberals. We have at least one member of our commission who is a very staunch Republican, conservative, and you know he makes his points very clear about where he thinks we stand. And I think that's really refreshing, to be honest, because it's important for all views to be represented. We are not a monolith. We may be very blue in Connecticut and especially in West Hartford, but we are not, you know, a monolith. And what I love most about having the diversity of voices is that it looks more like our town. So it's not just all, you know, white Catholics.
Yeah, and going back to Joe Keogh in Guilford, I was going to ask, in terms of people going to these webinars and participating, do you find that it's almost like preaching to the choir, or do people really, you know, participate and share different perspectives or their thoughts on different matters?
I think that's a great question. Certainly some of it's preaching to the choir, absolutely. But when we brought in Judge Robinson, we made sure to include and specifically invite folks from the sort of anti-CRT group that is running, you know, for the positions on the BOE and their supporters, and made sure to take questions from them specifically. So that we could try to have as balanced a perspective as possible. We never stated, and Judge Robinson never said, you know, that anyone should believe in CRT. It was more a way to address a lot of what we saw as misinformation about what CRT is and about its use in, you know, public schools. So, you know, I agree 100% with Dawn that it's really important to have, you know, at least some balance on the commission and with our views. So we also do have, well, we have one Republican, the only Republican who's asked to join, but we are, I believe at this point, majority independent. So we're not, you know, just all progressive Democrats on the commission.
Okay, Daisy, did you have a comment, or Margaret?
Hi, I wanted to make a comment that that's one of the unique things about Norwalk as well, that we had the mix on our commission. But I was thinking of when we did the event with the International Human Rights Day, the human trafficking, and when we did the human trafficking, one thing happened was that a lot of people didn't realize that it was right in their own backyard. They felt that it was maybe in New York, it was in New Jersey, Mexico, but they didn't realize that the human trafficking was also here. And one of the things came out was to educate people that it is happening. Another thing is to be aware of your surroundings, so that, you know, if you see something, to say something, because most of the time with human trafficking, you're not, that the person's not going to be able to tell you. If they tell you, then you can help them. But you should be able to see the traffic that's going in the house. Certain things that they mentioned that we could see. They also taught us about the markings that the women may get. But when it comes to the education part and the events that we had, the people in our that came to the event was educated and looked at the human trafficking in a different view. That's all I wanted to share.
No, that's great, because you're right. We see it. I hear about it as well in the rest stops along the highways, and you know, shopping areas, all kinds of things. And it is something to be aware of and try to notice to it.
Yeah,
What
one time
does-
they used to speak of human trafficking more, and then it just quiet down. But just because it's quiet down, don't mean it stopped. And we need to continue keeping abreast and people aware that this is happening, and it could be right next door.
Yeah, no, that is true. Let's see, we got another question about asking whether there was a link available to a Quinnipiac CRT presentation, and I'm not sure, I don't know if that was mentioned here or if that was with respect to Judge Robinson's presentation. If anyone has it and wants to post it in the link, that would be great. Otherwise, I was going to ask also, is there anything that any of the other municipalities or any of the other towns are doing to make their residents aware of the different types of things that they're involved in? Margaret, is your hand still up, or do you have?
Sorry, I don't have
Oh,
to figure
no
out how to
problem.
take my hand down.
I think if you just click on it again.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Did any of the other towns anything? Yep. Don?
My co-chair has launched a new Facebook effort. We're hoping to have, since we only meet once a month, and over the summer we don't meet. I mean, it's summer, so we just don't meet. But instead of just meeting virtually once a month, and we do still meet virtually, not in person, my co-chair wants to create a Facebook / Instagram live chat where once a week we have someone who will answer questions from the commission and someone from the town, or it doesn't have to be an official. It can be just a person of business, a inspirational leader, and we will talk to that person and invite questions about how we can do more for the Human Rights Commission. We find that ever since the pandemic, more people are using social media to connect, and that's one way we think we can reach more of our residents.
No, that's great. That's great, using social media for good things. And it's true. Any other towns doing anything different? And thank you, Joe, for posting the link. So I thought I saw a hand.
Actually,
Oh.
I have one more thing to add. It's Margaret from Norwalk. For years, I've been doing trainings with the Housing Authority for landlords in particular. We do fair housing component, but also about the Section 8 program, sort of, why this is a benefit to you, as opposed to the stereotypical view that it's not a good program. But so, and we did that just a week or so ago over Zoom in the evening. So that was, it's always well attended. Usually we do it in person, of course. Norwalk has not given out Section 8 vouchers lately because they're full, if you will. But when they were normally I do trainings for new Section 8 voucher holders too, because they're about to go out into the market and are likely to face some discrimination. So, and I'm so interested in what Guilford's doing about the webinar. So, because I used to do a ton more training than I'm doing since COVID. And, that I'm going to look into if we can do, I always find it difficult when you're a one person operation to do more, but so be it. Maybe we'll see if we can piggyback on the city's Zoom system. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it is great. And I agree with you that it makes it more possible for people to participate when they're on Zoom, because even pre-pandemic, maybe you wound up with people who couldn't come to a meeting in person because they're elderly and don't drive at night, or they just don't like to drive at night, elderly or not, or weather, or all different situations like that. So it does, open it up. And I guess then it could be more difficult maybe for people who don't have access to computers. That would be the only problem with that. Although I know a lot of towns have the libraries that do have computer access, or if they've got kids in the school systems, the schools provide access. So there are all different ways to get into this. Let's see, we had a question. Okay, have the towns seen more interest in addressing racism and other civil rights issues since the George Floyd and other situations over the past year? Have you seen more interest from local people and from community groups? Don?
I can speak to that. It's definitely more top of mind, and because of the inequities in our justice system, in our society, in our government that are baked in, we have done what we can to try and at least raise the issue. I don't think there's anything the Human Rights Commission can actually do to change things, but we are trying to more people aware. One of those efforts is there's been a nationwide movement to address reparations due to slavery. And what the Human Rights Commission in West Hartford is doing is preparing a recommendation that this be studied at our local level. We're not advocating for reparations, but we want to present to the town councilors what would prompt at least the study of reparations in our town. How would that happen? It's been happening across the country, and it's all a result of what happened with George Floyd. The other outgrowth, of course, is what I mentioned earlier, the Civilian Police Review Board. We tried to have an active role in how that was created. I'll be very honest, we were pushed aside. And that's okay. They had other people who they wanted to hear from, but I'm not going to deny it. We were a little bit taken aback that we didn't have a more instrumental role in how it was created, who was selected. The good news, I like to end on a positive, is that my former co-chair is on the commission and on that panel, on that police review board. So even though we didn't get a say, one of our people did, and that's progress in that. We have a Black lesbian woman who has had more than her shares of experience with driving while Black, being in the interactions with police, who I think lends an important voice, both as a woman in a same-sex marriage as well as a person of color.
No, and that is great. And you know what? And don't stop trying to get on, because I know even us as a State Human Rights Commission, we have had a couple of situations where we were not included on various commissions, and we were interested, and we kept asking or offering assistance and information, and there have been some that we've been added to. So it like you've said with some of the legislation also, you start and you try, and it's sausage making, and sometimes you got to try to refine it and make it better. So let's see, I'm just looking at some of the comments. So it looks like the Waterbury Commission, they said they've been struggling and have not gotten a lot of support from the city. They had drafted a resolution declaring racism a health crisis, and the Board of Aldermen didn't even really pay attention to it. Does anyone have any thoughts or any recommendations or proposals, or have you been dealing with has anyone else been dealing with situations where you're not getting the support that you need from your municipality? Sometimes it takes litigation, like you had to deal with in Norwalk, before you get people to finally agree. And Dawn, you had, oh, you're still mute.
Now can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little quiet, but I can hear you.
Okay, I'll speak very loudly.
Oh.
I am Wallflower. As a member of the media, my advice to Bernard and to others who are getting ignored by their aldermen or selectmen, and by the way, why do we have to call them men? We advocate for local media coverage. Write a letter to your editor of the newspaper, ask to be interviewed, bring it up. It doesn't mean you have to be, casting aspersions, but you can say that we only resort to this because we're not getting attention, and we are calling on the elected leaders to give it the hearing. So I strongly advise either a letter to the editor or an interview in the local media, not Channel 8 or anything, just the local newspaper, because once they see that in print, they will jump at you. They will jump all over you, and they may even scold you for doing it. But if you're not getting response any other way, what else do you have?
No, and that's that is a very good point. Now, sometimes, depending on those letters to the editor pages, they can get pretty brutal as well. One of the other things, let's see, we got a comment from Sean Cardwell from Hamden Human Rights and Relations. So he's at work right now, but can't get on camera. But he said there's about 11 towns that Hamden is involved with that have made a human rights forum group. It includes Guilford and West Hartford. If anyone else is interested, he has his email in the chat, and they'd be glad to have other organizations as well.
I would just add too that you're going to sometimes meet with resistance, either disinterest. I mean, I think I've been called crazy or a difficult woman, which I take as a badge of honor, many times. And you just have to, as I've gotten older, I've developed thicker skin, if you will. So, and you have to understand too that you're not going to always succeed. But I think a lot of it's about persistence, especially when you're ahead of the curve on, or there's a new issue. If you're not persistent, then issues will die away and change will not come. So that would be my advice too. I agree with, letters to the editor. For a while, I had a newspaper column where I got to raise fair housing issues. So I would recommend, I actually would love to go back to that, either an online column or a print column where you get to raise sort of the issues of the day. And I did it obviously from a fair housing perspective. So that would be sort of my comment. Don't give up, be persistent.
Oh, that's great. That is great. I see a comment that Waterbury's wanted to celebrate Human Rights Day in December, but they haven't heard back yet from the city. And I, Farmington said they do a celebration of Human Rights Day in December. They give out an award, which is nice. It kind of brings attention to people. Let's see, we had a question from Robin Trepanere.
Good morning. So I was just wondering, Margaret had told us earlier about how she does investigate some fair housing complaints. I'm wondering if any of the other commissions on the panel or the municipalities that are attending this panel, if they have the authority to accept complaints, any types of discrimination complaints or human rights complaints, and if any of them have actually investigated them and what that might look like.
Margaret, do you want? Oh, okay. Dawn, do you want to answer that? And then Margaret, and then we'll see if anyone else from the panel also does those, accepts those types of cases. Oh, you muted again.
Not muted, but it's. I think it's on your end. I'm not muted.
Oh, no, now I can hear you.
Okay, it's so weird. It says muted on your side, but not muted on my side. I don't get it. Hey, how are you? It starts with the complaint, and the complaint usually goes to a single commissioner unless someone writes a letter to all of us, and then we present it at our commission meeting as to whether we would investigate that. I individually have investigated, but only after our commission decides as a group whether we want to get involved. So I don't do usually anything without checking with our fellow commissioners. If we don't do it at a meeting, we also have a Google group that we can email each other to start the ball rolling. But usually it's always as a committee response. But that's how it starts. It starts with someone contacting an individual commissioner.
Right.
Yeah,
No,
in
that's-
Norwalk, as I said, I investigate for housing complaints. When the Human Relations Commission had a director and an investigator, which, as Daisy told you, we're desperately looking for good new people. They investigated employment discrimination cases, and we used to hold hearings locally, which was kind of great because they were at night. Wasn't great for staff because we worked late into the night, but it was great for the complainants often. You know, if you work at Walmart or some other similar job, you can't easily take time off to go to Hartford for fair housing during the day. So we would be able to do it at night, and that was a lot for especially lower income people who might work jobs with less flexibility, and or for people who didn't have transportation. So, you know, but Norwalk hasn't held hearings in a long, long time. The commission, the Human Relations Commission, as far as fair housing, decided that those cases would be referred to the CHRO. So obviously I don't refer to Human Relations only to have them refer to CHRO. I'll either refer directly to CHRO or more commonly to council.
Right, right, and so because definitely the CHRO takes those complaints. There's not the same issue of the requirement of exhaustion, for housing cases as there is for employment, because there are some timeframes. Although ours, the CHRO, were just extended to 300 days as well for discrimination complaints. So there is a longer period of time to be in the local commissions as well. So Joe, you had your hand up, Joe Keogh?
I do. I actually have a question for Dawn. So we were told by town council and by a lawyer who specializes in FOIA that anytime all commission members are on an email or anything like that at the same time and someone hits reply all, it counts as a meeting. So how do you get around that using the Google Doc between meetings so you're still being FOIA compliant, which sounds like you are? How does that work? That would be very helpful for us to know.
I appreciate the question. Can you hear me?
If you could speak up just a little bit.
Okay, I'll
Okay.
shout.
Yep.
Yes, we have been trained as well by our lawyers that every communication, even if we're texting each other, if it has to do with the Human Rights Commission, is part of the record. So we don't really get around it. We're just very careful about what we discuss. So if someone says something and I'm not really happy about it, the only solution I have is basically make a face. There's not much I can do. I can't write something. Any kind of written form of communication, a text, email, Google groups, part of our agenda meetings, those are all on the record. all freedom of information. And for that reason, when someone contacts the Human Rights Commission, they need to be aware that there's no really confidentiality. It's public record. It does potentially have a downside, but I believe in transparency and in wanting people to be able to see how the sausage gets made. So that's the downside, but it's a very essential part of our democracy that everyone knows what's going on.
No, that totally makes sense. We were told by our town lawyer that we're not allowed, like that he put us on restrictions, so we're not allowed to do it at all.
Okay, that's an overreaction in my opinion, but it's like you're telling your dad that he's wrong. What good is that going to do you? I don't know.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks, Dawn.
I mean, the only other solution would be, do you have any lawyers on your commission?
We have someone who thinks of himself as a lawyer. He was raised by a lawyer, so.
Okay. The alternative to just basically lumping it would be to ask a lawyer to do a pro bono challenge to that restriction. We have lawyers on our commission, which I'm very grateful for. People say, what's worse, a lawyer or a journalist? So we've got both. But I would strongly recommend that if you do want to challenge that, and I would, have a lawyer write a pro bono letter to whoever this person is, asking them to point to whatever charter or restriction. They've got to back it up. They can't just say it.
Okay. And so when you're working on a Google Doc, do you post that? Like our minutes, our agendas and minutes get posted to our town website. Do you post them? Would that
No, the only thing gets posted to our town website are our minutes.
Okay.
However, the Google group is publicly accessible. So Joe Schmo could join the Google group and see all our emails.
Interesting. Okay, that is an interesting solution. Okay, thanks, Don.
You're welcome.
Let's see, we got another question in the chat. Do any of the local commissions have either power to file a complaint with CHRO, or do you make referrals to CHRO as well? And I think we heard, that sometimes, at least in Norwalk, sometimes you send out to private counsel or to the commission, or to fair housing, or something. Do any other groups have any other responses? Okay. And then I believe this was Waterbury. It says, I know we can inquire and support a complaint in writing, but I think this is again the Waterbury Commission. They're nervous about doing it, and can they do it? I don't see anything that would say you could not support. Like if someone had come to your agency and you wanted to support them, either referring them to the CHRO or to another entity, but I guess that may go along with the politics in your town. I don't know as to whether, if you're a local human rights commission or a local human rights agency, I would assume that part of your role is to support human rights for your town residents. Otherwise, I don't know why why they would want to have a commission. Do any other groups have anything to add to that? Yeah, I don't.
Although we don't refer as a commission people to CHRO, CHRO is a public entity, and we certainly would, in a case like Bernard's describing, provide the website and say, here you go. I don't think that's really a referral as much as it is making you aware of how to file your own complaint. That's the probably extent of what we would do. In my time, I think I've been with the commission 2 years now, only a few months as co-chair. I don't recall any cases of us referring a complaint as a commission to CHRO, but we have certainly made people aware of CHRO's existence and how to file a complaint.
And we definitely try to do a lot of training and outreach as well to make people aware of us. But I still run into people all the time who are like, I never heard about your agency. So it's always good to do that. And in fact, on that note, I'm interested in hearing from some of the other agencies who haven't spoken up yet. What do you do to educate your communities about civil rights issues, about non-discrimination within your towns, whether it's in housing or employment or town services, things like that? What kinds of things do you do to educate people and let them know what their rights are, what their what even accessibility there might be, or things like that? Yes. Courtney Shields.
Hi, Robin. Thank you. So just so everyone is aware, I am a human rights investigator for the CHRO in our Bridgeport office, our Southwest Regional office. But I know one of the things that the CHRO's Diversity and Inclusion Committee has been working on, which I happen to be doing some of the social media work for that committee. But one of the things that we've been actively trying to do to help just essentially the residents of Connecticut know what the CHRO is and what we do and what we cover and what we can help them with, is that we have been doing a series on both our Instagram and Facebook that are just kind of very short descriptions of what the CHRO does, what kind of protected classes we cover, that we cover employment, housing, and public accommodation. And we've been trying to make it as digestible as possible for the general public. So those series on our Instagram and Facebook include images and just, again, as brief as we can be and as straightforward as we can be for our audience to explain what we do and what we cover. So I just figured I'd mention that if anyone wants to look that up, even for our agency itself. I've actually directed some attorneys to it sometimes just so that they know the basics of what we do. For some that aren't as familiar with our process. So that's one of the ways that I know we've been working on to try to get it more out there as well.
Yeah, well, that's great. It is. You guys do. If anyone's not friended the Connecticut Commission on Facebook or Instagram, it's really a good idea. And they put out, our Diversity and Inclusion Committee puts out some great posts that provide a lot of information. We also speak on Monday mornings on WICC. I know they did just recently get a FM station. They have, it's AM 660. They have Melissa in the morning, Melissa Shake It Off, who has a segment on discrimination issues. And they just had one on cultural appropriation and Halloween costumes and things like that. But some really interesting issues do get discussed, and we're always happy to answer any questions and things like that. Now I know part of this session is also supposed to be to allow the Human Rights Commissions to network and get to know each other as well, in the work you're all doing. So does anyone have any comments or questions that you want to put out there for each other? We have situations, we've got a lot with schools, we have a lot of issues with, again, George Floyd and the aftermath and discussions on race and discrimination and housing. We've also got various activism, Black Lives Matter, and again, some of this does get tied up in the schools and what we are educating our children about. So what are some different things you all are dealing with to talk to each other?
Well, we do invite other HRCs to join us so that we can sort of like come up with battle plans. What are you doing that we can do? What are we doing that you can do? Sort of like, strategizing and to join forces. So that's one way. And I would love anyone to contact me to either have me come to your commission or you join us virtually at ours My name is my email, dawnennis@gmail.com.
And so, yes. Joe Pugh.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight what Sean from Hamden wrote in the chat earlier. So there is a statewide network of human rights and human relations commissions that started, it's formed. It's in its infancy. The first meeting was in June. There's actually a meeting tonight at 7:30. I know Sean put his email information in the chat. But the idea there is to do exactly what you're talking about, give all of the state human rights and relations commissions an opportunity to network, to share ideas, to, band together on statewide initiatives, to, provide mentoring for others who need it, just like Dawn did for me today. So I, really encourage anyone who's interested to reach out to Sean for, to get connected with that group. I think it's moving in a good direction.
And it sounds like, thank you, Joe. And it sounds like Waterbury is really having a tough time with their town and Alders not being supported either. And are there any other commissions that really don't see the support they'd like from their towns? And maybe there are ways you can brainstorm with each other to either get more people involved or get more support. I know I look frequently through various newspapers around our state, and they all have very different, let's just say, editorial positions and slants on how they look at these human rights issues. And some parts of the state maybe seem a little more supportive than others. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Well, like I said, we have not, seen too many appeals from the local commissions, and I guess to some degree, they're not doing a lot of investigations, and they are, either sending them to, when they do get some information, they're sending them to private counsel, and they're sending them, to other entities, which is good, because we want to make sure that people's rights get preserved and they don't lose their right to either go forward in court or go forward through the administrative process. And at least with respect to the employment discrimination context, you have to go through, you have to exhaust the administrative process before you can decide to go to court. So cases do get dismissed from the Superior Court if you file without coming to the commission first. We did get one question on how do the commissions address various disability-related complaints in their towns. So that's one question. And then I did see another comment from Waterbury. When they get housing cases, complaints, they do send them to CHRO. And like I said, we do have a fair housing unit that does address those. And then we sometimes prosecute them through, if we find discrimination, through either our administrative process or through our through election to the Superior Court. So we litigate these cases in either forum, depending on how the parties wish to proceed. There is not really a way necessarily for the entity to follow up on a case. So for the Waterbury Housing Commission, I mean, you could contact CHRO and ask if the case has been decided, but the only information we're allowed to give out are the complaint that's filed and the final disposition. So once a case is decided, we can let you know what's going on with that. CHRO has no cost to file complaints with us or prosecute them in any way. But so have some of the other commissions dealt with disability discrimination situations? I can only imagine some of the municipalities dealing, like you said, with curb cuts. As you said, you've had that at in Norwalk that there are a lot more curb cuts, and I have seen that as well. Do you get complaints about that, access into stores, things like that? Dawn, were you raising your hand?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
In addition to this being part of our human rights task, I heard an expression from a disabled activist once that I really think is very important. It's nothing about us without us. While we don't have anyone that I know of that's identified as disabled on our commission, we do have a Persons with Disabilities Advisory Commission. So it is a separate commission that improves public awareness and understanding the needs and the rights of people with disabilities, or I like to say people who are differently abled. There are 11 members on this commission, and we generally just refer any complaints that come to us to this advisory commission. They meet just like we do once a month.
That's great. That's really great to, make sure that people are included in the process. And actually, Attorney Kimberly Jacobson from our office, she just commented that she's on that commission as well. Okay, Daisy, I see you have your hand up. Oh, you're muted.
I wanted to share when it comes to the ADA, the human relations, ADA is a subcommittee of it. One of the things that I may have already mentioned, but I am proud that with the making our city more compliant with the ADA is making people who want to go on a beach where they didn't have access to be even go on the sand or even in the water. Now we have they have access, and
That's cool.
yes, it's a really good thing. It's a really good thing. Now I wanted to share that we have a good mayor that's been supportive of what when it comes to ADA and what we've been doing. So I just wanted to share that the thing about the beach.
Yeah. Do you guys have those wheelchairs that can go on the beach, or do you have those those
we have the
pads?
chairs. We have the chairs for them to go on the beach. We have
Into the water even.
into the water.
Oh wow.
So because again, you can't think of other people. They had the desire to be there, and then they can't do it because of their handicap. So there is ways to do it, and Noah found the way to be compliant to it and to give the access for it.
Yeah, that's great. I was walking actually on the beach in Milford a couple weeks ago, and I saw they also, I didn't see any wheelchairs, but I don't know if they keep them, somewhere that you have to ask them, but they did have this, a thick, like pad that went over the sand that made a path that you could go down.
They had that too.
Yeah, it's in Norwalk, it's like a mat, and it goes right down to the water. And obviously not off season, but during the swim season when there's lifeguards, we have two kinds of chairs. One that, you could just use your own wheelchair on that mat, but they also have wheelchairs that go on the sand, and then one you can go right into the water in. And the mat to me is amazing because it's not just for wheelchairs. Like my brother has a spinal cord injury and he can walk, but uneven or shifting surfaces like sand would be a problem for him. So that mat allows, and my mother too, who's 91 and a little unsteady on her feet now, that mat allows for people who have any kind of unsteadiness to access the beach.
Oh,
so
that's really great.
Yeah,
that is really great. Kimberly Jacobson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
I just wanted to mention with election season, sort of where election day right around the corner, one issue that I think all towns should be concerned about is accessibility to the voting, the ability to vote. And each town should have different accessibility equipment available for folks who need it. And one suggestion someone had made to me was, even if you're not needing it, you can go in and say that you would like to use like the touchpad voting, the accessible voting, and see if your town has it and how they react, it would be a good test to see if the towns are doing a good job.
That's a really good idea. Do some personalized, some private testing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anyone can also see the chat, but it seems that Waterbury is looking for assistance in how to address their the lack of support from the town. And I think maybe going to some of these meetings with the new Human Rights Commission, Human Rights Group, that would be maybe people have some thoughts as well, and maybe encouraging more people to come to the commission and file complaints against the town when, if they're not being responsive to issues, maybe that would be a way to address it as well. So Nancy Parents at the town of Farmington also did a disabled water education program, which sounded like that was a great idea as well, because people need to know how to swim. With the Justice Department, I think, had put out within the past few years some new rules about accessibility of swimming pools and facilities to allow people to get into pools, whether it's ramps or special chairs or things like that, lifts, so that you can get in and out of the pool. Because it's a great exercise, it's a fun activity, it allows people to participate. Somebody provided some additional information also to Waterbury on how to reach out to art, because we do have a Waterbury office actually right in the Waterbury City Hall. We have one of our branch offices of CHRO in that office, so that would be a great step as well. Okay, I'm getting like a 5-minute notice on this. So does anyone else have anything they would like to say or add or ask any of our participants before we finish up? I know there might be some shy or quiet people sitting in the back that haven't gotten to add their 2 cents yet. Okay, well, there are a whole bunch of additional and really interesting programs coming up as the day goes on today. Again, the lunch speaker about journalism in this new age is going to be really interesting at noon. And then we've got some great housing and COVID and sexual harassment and other issues going on, other panels going on this afternoon. I know I haven't stated all of them. We have one on contracting for municipalities also, because I'm sure you're all aware of the need to try to spread state dollars to all businesses, including small businesses and businesses owned by members of minority groups, individuals with disabilities, women, and not the same big ones who own all those big trucks we see along the highways and things like that. So, spreading out the state dollars and the public dollars for funding. We have a panel on that as well. So I hope I will see you all later and in other sessions. And I guess I'll end this panel now, since I don't see, let me see if I see any last-minute questions. I'm just wishing everyone a happy holidays, and keep in touch, and we hope to see you all soon throughout the day. Have a great day, everyone.